So today I'm going to recap season 2 of Hannibal. I hope you all have watched the first season, and if you have, then we can continue from here. But for those who haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you do. You'll find the link in the description, so make sure to check it out. Story kicks off with a shocking flash forward. We see Hannibal Lecter in his kitchen, elegantly preparing a meal of human meat. Suddenly, Jack Crawford bursts in, his face revealing that he finally knows Hannibal's dark secret. He viciously attacks Hannibal, leading to a brutal fight. Jack manages to get Hannibal in a chokehold, and Hannibal goes limp, seemingly unconscious. But just as Jack releases his grip, we realize Hannibal was faking it. He grabs a shard of broken glass and stabs Jack in the neck, severely wounding him. A terrified Jack manages to lock himself in a pantry, and Hannibal begins to smash the door down with an axe. The scene then abruptly jumps back 12 weeks to show us how things escalated to this point. We see Hannibal hosting Jack for dinner. Jack expresses his guilt and sorrow over losing Will Graham. Hannibal, feigning sympathy, says that Will was his friend too and that he also feels his loss. Jack mentions that Will is accusing Hannibal of being the real killer, but he dismisses it as the rambling of a mentally unstable man. In a clever move, Hannibal suggests that if Jack has any doubts, he is welcome to investigate him.
You're my patient now, Will.
I'm not talking to you, Frederick. I want to talk to Dr. Lecter.
Meanwhile, we find Will Graham imprisoned in a facility run by Dr. Frederick Chilton. When Chilton tries to question him, Will stonewalls him, saying the only person he'll talk to is Dr. Lecter. Elsewhere, Dr. Alana Bloom files a formal complaint against Jack Crawford. She holds him responsible for pushing Will beyond his breaking point by forcing him to work on gruesome cases. Alana apologizes to Jack for taking this step, but explains that her actions are driven by her love for Will and her need to protect him. The story then shifts to a river where two city workers are trying to clear a blockage. They're hit by a foul stench, and when they dig into the riverbed, they make a horrifying discovery: a mass grave filled with numerous decaying bodies. Hannibal visits his own psychiatrist, Dr. Bedelia du Maurier. He informs her that Will has requested to see him. Bedelia questions his motives, asking if he truly wants to see Will. Hannibal admits that even though he knows Will believes he's a murderer, he still wants the meeting. She astutely points out that he only wants to see Will because he betrayed him and now intends to manipulate him further. But then she delivers a stunning blow. Will can't manipulate Hannibal because, as she puts it, he has already manipulated you. Hannibal is visibly taken aback by this but says nothing. Soon after, Hannibal visits Will in prison. He asks Will if he's lost in his thoughts again. Will replies that he's no longer lost. Instead, whenever he imagines the murders, he now sees Hannibal's face. Hannibal tries to gaslight him, insisting that Will committed the crimes and that he, as a friend, wants to help him. Will coldly rejects this, stating, "You're not my friend." He vows that he knows Hannibal is responsible and that while he can't prove it yet, he will find the evidence, and when he does, he won't spare him.
How long will you have my suits?
You might want to think about supplementing your wardrobe. Except for maybe Will Graham.
You'll have to be disappointed. The beauty of what you do, Miss Katz, is in its certainty. It'll be your evidence that convicts Will.
The forensics team, led by Beverly Katz, investigates Hannibal but finds no incriminating evidence. Beverly tells Hannibal that she's sorry for Will and doesn't believe he's capable of murder. The FBI calls Hannibal to the river crime scene to inspect the bodies. Hannibal observes that the bodies were coated in silicone and suggests the killer is creating a collection of human models. He theorizes that the killer dumped these bodies in the river because he considered them imperfect for his project. Later, Hannibal gives Dr. du Maurier a signed agreement, allowing her to break their doctor-patient confidentiality if Jack Crawford questions her. When she asks why he'd do this, Hannibal reveals that the FBI has appointed him as Will's replacement, taking him to crime scenes for investigations. She realizes he's putting her in the exact same position he put Will in, forcing her to lie for him. Alana, now caring for Will's dogs, visits him in prison. He tells her he's firing his FBI-appointed lawyers and needs a private attorney who will understand his side of the story. Alana warns him that no lawyer will take his case because all the evidence points to him. Will insists he's trying to remember exactly how Hannibal framed him so he can get his revenge. Unbeknownst to them, Dr. Chilton is listening to their entire conversation through a hidden microphone. Will asks Alana to help him recover his memories. She agrees and uses hypnosis. Under hypnosis, Will has a terrifying vision. He's at Hannibal's dining table, and across from him sits Hannibal, transformed into a demonic, horned figure. The vision is so frightening that it jolts him back to consciousness, but he refuses to tell Alana what he saw. Meanwhile, the new serial killer stalks his next victim. He approaches a man, touches his arm, and compliments his skin. Later that night, he starts the man's car and leaves it running outside his house. When the man comes out to turn it off, he notices a piece of plastic sheeting hanging from his trunk. As he goes to fix it, the killer attacks from behind and kidnaps him. The killer then injects him with a paralytic drug and begins covering his body with silicone to turn him into another model. Back at the FBI lab, investigators discover that the victims have high levels of heroin in their systems, explaining how the killer kept them docile. They also find that their limbs were stitched together. Unable to understand the killer's motive, Beverly Katz decides she needs Will's unique insight. She visits Will in prison, and he's glad to see her. She shows him the case file. After examining the victim's photos, Will deduces that the killer isn't just collecting bodies. He's creating a color palette. Later, while eating his prison dinner, Will has a sudden, horrifying flashback. He remembers a time when Hannibal drugged him, forced a tube down his throat, and pushed Abigail Hobbs' severed ear into his stomach. This is how the ear ended up being found when he later vomited. This memory solidifies his belief. Hannibal is the killer, and he framed him with meticulous, almost untraceable precision. Jack, missing Will, visits his old, empty house. Alana finds him there. She apologizes again for the lawsuit, but Jack tells her she did the right thing. He promises to testify in court that he pushed Will too hard, which could give Will's defense a fighting chance. Following this, Jack visits Will in prison. Will tells him with absolute certainty that Hannibal is the Chesapeake Ripper, but he has no physical proof. Still skeptical, Jack tells Will to escape his fantasy world and leaves, unconvinced. Then the scene shifts to Hannibal waiting for Dr. Du Maurier for their session, but she never arrives. In the final scene, we see the killer's latest victim, now covered in silicone, suddenly waking up. He manages to break free and starts to run for his life. The escaped victim is running desperately through a cornfield, with the killer in hot pursuit firing a gun at him. The young man reaches the edge of a cliff with nowhere to go. He takes a leap of faith but falls, hits his head on a rock below, and dies instantly. Alana and Hannibal visit Will, who puts on a convincing performance of being confused and broken. He claims he can't distinguish between what's real and what's a delusion and asks Hannibal for his help. The moment they're gone, Will's sorrowful expression vanishes, revealing he was putting on an act to ensnare Hannibal. That evening, Dr. Du Maurier goes to Hannibal's office to confront him. She tells him she can no longer be his therapist, admitting that his words feel calculated and that she has become deeply afraid of him, seeing him as a dangerous person. As Hannibal steps closer, she recoils in fear and begs him to let her leave, promising she won't tell anyone what she suspects. Hannibal allows her to walk away unharmed. The FBI discovers the body of the man who fled. During the autopsy, Jack questions the team about what the victims have in common. Beverly Katz mentions the color palette theory. Hearing this, Hannibal cleverly remarks that it sounds like something only Will Graham could come up with. Jack immediately understands that Beverly has been secretly consulting with Will. He furiously reprimands her in his office, but then, realizing her value, he quietly authorizes her to continue working with Will, as long as no one else finds out. Smelling the body, Hannibal detects the scent of a cornfield, deducing that the killer's workshop must be located near one. Later, during a therapy session, Hannibal questions Will about his sudden desire for help. Will maintains his act of confusion, claiming he doesn't know what's real anymore. When Hannibal asks if Beverly visited him, Will admits she did. He then feeds Hannibal a crucial piece of insight from his own analysis. The killer isn't just painting with bodies. He's stitching them together to create a human mural. Beverly visits Will again. He agrees to help her on one condition. She must ignore the official narrative that he's a killer and instead help him find evidence to prove Hannibal's guilt. She accepts his terms. Looking at the photo of the latest victim, Will uses his empathic ability to reconstruct the crime. He realizes this man wasn't dumped in the river like the others. He died trying to escape. He warns Beverly that Hannibal is deliberately misguiding the investigation. Acting on the cornfield clue, Hannibal locates the killer's lair, a large silo. Looking down from a catwalk, he sees the killer's masterpiece, a giant, grotesque eye made of dozens of human bodies stitched together. The killer himself appears.
Hello. I love your work.
And Hannibal, in a chilling moment, tells him he admires his work. Soon after, the FBI raids the silo. Hannibal explains the scene to Jack, theorizing that the killer created the eye so that God could see him. He also predicts that the killer will now stop, believing his life's work is complete and God is now watching over him. Later, during a formal inquiry into his conduct, Jack accepts responsibility for pushing Will, but also states that Will was a willing participant who found purpose in saving lives. The forensics team identifies 46 of the 47 bodies in in the mural. The twist, the final, unidentified body belongs to the killer himself. The team notes his leg is missing but can't explain why. We then see the horrifying truth. Hannibal killed him. And in a final, gruesome scene, he is shown cooking and eating the killer's severed leg. Dr. Du Maurier visits Jack one last time. She warns him that she is resigning and leaving because she believes he is in danger from Hannibal, and she no longer feels safe. Her final act is to visit Will in prison. She leans in close and whispers, "I believe you." For Will, this is a powerful moment of validation, as someone finally sees the truth. Then we see Hannibal going to Dr. Du Maurier's home, likely to kill her, only to find it empty. She's already gone. On her table, she has left behind a single bottle of her perfume as a final, defiant message. Hannibal picks it up and smiles. Then we see Will Graham having a nightmare that he's being executed in an electric chair. He wakes up just in time to go to court for his own trial. In the courtroom, the prosecuting attorney presents her narrative to the judge. She argues that everything started with the death of Garrett Jacob Hobbs. She claims that after Will killed Hobbs, he began to identify with him, which unconsciously led him to commit the other murders, including the 4 girls. The last victim was Abigail Hobbs, whom he allegedly killed and cannibalized, which is why her ear was found in his stomach. The prosecutor also explains that Will's unique ability to think like a killer is what makes him so good at catching them. Outside the courtroom, Jack Crawford is waiting to testify. The head of the FBI approaches him and warns him that the Bureau's reputation is in his hands, so he must choose his words carefully. However, when Jack takes the stand, he tells the court that Will was working under his direct supervision and that he personally pushed Will to work on these draining cases because he was saving lives. The FBI head is furious, as Jack's testimony has damaged the Bureau's image. After the hearing, Will's lawyer tells him he should be grateful to Jack, whose testimony helped plant a seed of doubt about Will's guilt. Just then, a piece of mail arrives for Will. When his lawyer opens it, they find a severed human ear inside. Will is shocked, wondering who could have sent it. Meanwhile, Jack visits Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal asks why he gave such a damaging testimony. Jack confesses that he wants to resign from the FBI to escape the chaos and spend time with his wife, Bella, who is terminally ill. His plan is to take her to Italy, where they can be together before she passes. Hannibal advises against it, telling Jack that the FBI still needs him and that he shouldn't give up. Later, Hannibal and Jack are at the forensic lab. The examiners tell them the ear sent to Will was a gift from an admirer. Jack asks who would send such a thing, and Hannibal suggests that since Will insists there's another killer, perhaps this is that killer showing his admiration. Hannibal then visits Will in his cell. Will immediately asks if Hannibal sent the ear. Hannibal denies it, reminding Will that he is his friend. Will confesses that being locked up is making him think constantly, and he often feels like he really is the killer. He knows there's no concrete evidence against Hannibal, but his gut tells him Hannibal is the culprit. Hannibal dismisses this as a product of his stressed mind, reassuring him that he was never a killer, while secretly knowing that he himself is the one responsible. The next day in court, tabloid journalist Freddie Lowndes is called to testify. She claims that Abigail Hobbs always said Will wanted to be a father figure to her, and Freddie believes Will killed and ate her. During cross-examination, Will's lawyer asks Freddie how many times she's been sued for libel. She admits it's been 6 times. He then asks how many of those cases were settled out of court. She again answers 6, effectively destroying her credibility as a witness. That evening, Will's lawyer coaches Alana Bloom on her upcoming testimony, as she wants to help Will. He advises her to deliver her statement in a way that feels completely genuine and truthful. Back at the lab, forensics makes a breakthrough. The ear was cut with the same type of knife used on Abigail Hobbs's ear, a knife belonging to Will Graham. This piece of evidence was meant to be presented to prove Will's innocence, suggesting the real killer is still at large. The FBI tracks down the person whose name was on the mail sent to Will. When they breach the door of his house, they trigger a fiery booby trap. After the explosion, Jack and his team enter to find the man's dead body impaled on a set of deer antlers, with his face cut in a smile, just like a previous victim. The FBI now theorizes that Will committed this murder long ago to create a scapegoat and confuse them. The head of the FBI brings Jack before the judge and asks if he wants to change his testimony. Jack refuses. He informs them about the newly discovered body, which has been killed in the same signature style. Everyone is completely confused about what's happening. Dr. Chilton is the next to testify. He claims that Will is an intelligent psychopath who will kill again if given the chance. After court, Hannibal visits Will, bringing photos of the latest crime scene. He asks Will to analyze it. Slipping into the killer's mindset, Will deduces that the killer killer first shot the victim in the chest to stop his heart, impaled him on the antlers, and then carved his face to mimic the other murders and frame Will. Finally, the killer cut off his ear to send to Will. Will looks at Hannibal and says he must have already known all of this, so why ask? Hannibal replies that he wants Will to trust him so he can help him heal. Alana visits Will and asks if he wants to abandon his defense strategy. Will agrees it's the right move for now. His lawyer explains to Alana that there's a copycat killer out there who is acting as Will's admirer. Alana asks Will if he thinks he committed the crimes. His lawyer interrupts, telling her not to ask that. He reveals his new strategy. He will argue that Will is not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming he was unconscious of his actions. Finally, Hannibal Lecter takes the stand. He states that Jack Crawford hired him to monitor Will's stability, but he wasn't officially his psychiatrist. When the prosecutor asks why he failed to prevent the tragedy, Hannibal explains that Will's mental state was fragile and the stress from his FBI work became too much, which could have caused him to commit the murders. Hannibal also introduces the theory that there might be two separate killers at work. The prosecution dismisses this idea, insisting Will is the only killer. The judge adjourns the court for the day. The next morning, a cleaner enters the courtroom and finds the judge's dead body. His head is split open, and his brain has been removed and placed on a set of scales, with his heart on the other side. The FBI arrives and investigates. They are now certain there is a second killer. The examiner tells Jack the judge was also shot in the chest to stop his heart before his brain was removed. Jack asks Hannibal for his take. Hannibal suggests that this killer has a goal, to prove to the world that Will Graham is innocent. The head of the FBI arrives and is horrified. Jack tells her the trial was supposed to end today, but now it's in chaos. She warns Jack not to trust Will so much, seeing that he is trying to save him. Alana visits Will and tells him about the judge's murder. Will gets a chilling feeling and says he believes the killer is someone who has been sitting in the courtroom with them, watching everything unfold. Alana asks what the killer wants. Will replies, he wants to know me. Then we see Will dreaming he's fishing with Abigail Hobbs. He tells her that her father taught her to hunt, and now he will teach her to fish. He is woken up by a visit from Beverly Katz. She tells him he was right about the human mural killer. The man in the center of the mural was the original artist. The real question is, who killed him? Will suggests it was another killer who understood and admired his art, convincing him to become a part of it. Will is convinced that Hannibal Lecter is this copycat killer. Beverly doesn't believe him. Will insists that she will one day and asks her to keep looking for evidence of his innocence, which will ultimately lead her to Hannibal. Beverly agrees to investigate for him, but says she has no reason to suspect Hannibal. Elsewhere, a new victim is found displayed on a tree, his body covered in honeycombs. Dr. Chilton visits Will, who now agrees to speak with him on one condition. Chilton must tell Hannibal to stop visiting. Will tells Chilton he believes Hannibal is a killer who framed him, and he will get his revenge. Intrigued, Chilton says he wants to run some tests on Will to see if he's telling the truth, and Will agrees. Meanwhile, Jack's wife, Bella, visits Hannibal, confessing she is ready to die. Hannibal tells her that death is a cure and shouldn't be feared. Bella worries about Jack, who is trying to prolong her life because he can't let go. Hannibal reassures her that Jack loves her deeply. He encourages her to accept death and find peace. The FBI investigates the beehive body. They discover the victim's eyes and brain have been removed, and bees have built their hive inside his body cavity. The killer wanted the body to become a natural hive. Beverly calls Hannibal for his surgical expertise during the autopsy. She asks if he was ever a surgeon, and he confirms he was. She tells him about Will's theory that a copycat killer murdered the muralist, and admits Will wants her to investigate Hannibal. Understanding the situation, Hannibal gives her a cryptic clue. To find the killer, she needs to look under the skin. Chilton proceeds with his test on Will, injecting him with a truth serum. Under its influence, Will's memories flood back. He sees visions of Hannibal sedating and hypnotizing him, planting thoughts in his mind to make him seem insane. He tells Chilton that Hannibal orchestrated his entire mental breakdown. Chilton realizes Will is telling the truth, but feels no sympathy for him. When Hannibal arrives for a visit, Chilton informs him that Will refuses to see him and is starting to remember how Hannibal framed him. Hannibal denies it, but Chilton says it doesn't matter, suggesting they work together on Will's case. At home, Bella takes a lethal dose of morphine to end her suffering. Jack, wanting to share her experience, tries a small amount himself. Bella begs him to let her die alone and not to follow her into death. He holds her, and they share a loving embrace. Meanwhile, the investigation into the beehive victim reveals he was a homeless man. We then see the killer, an elderly woman who practices acupuncture. She paralyzes one of her patients, who suffers from chronic pain. She lobotomizes him with a chisel and hammer, telling him he will now be free from pain. She then releases him. When the FBI finds this man, they notice that the bee sting marks on the other victim were likely meant to hide needle marks. Beverly has a revelation. She returns to the body of the mural killer, remembers Hannibal's clue, and opens up the stitches on his leg. She discovers that the killer who murdered him didn't just take his leg, he also took his kidney. Still under the drug's influence, Will has another memory flash. He remembers bringing Dr. Gideon to Hannibal's office. He recalls the conversation between Hannibal and Gideon, realizing that Hannibal gave Gideon Alana's address so he would go there and kill her. With this, Will's eyes open. He now remembers everything. The next day, Beverly tells Will that the mural killer was missing a kidney. Will states this is Hannibal's work, as he is a surgeon and the real Chesapeake Ripper. Beverly admits she told Hannibal about their deal to investigate him. Will is alarmed, telling her she's now in grave danger and must stay away from Hannibal. Beverly asks why the Ripper takes his victims' organs. Will then remembers the time Hannibal brought him breakfast, and it dawns on him that he was served human meat. He tells Beverly he's eating them. Jack and his team visit the elderly acupuncturist, as both recent victims were her patients. She calmly confesses, explaining she cured her first patient of his anxiety by killing him and lobotomized the second to free him from his pain. She sees her actions as a form of treatment. They arrest her. Bella, barely able to walk, arrives at Hannibal's home. She tells him she has taken a fatal dose of morphine and came there to die so Jack wouldn't have to find her. As a final gift, she gives him an antique coin. She thanks him for helping her see death as a cure and peacefully passes away. Hannibal flips her coin. It lands on heads. He calmly gets a medical kit, fills a syringe with an antidote, and injects Bella, reviving her against her will. Beverly is looking for Jack but can't find him. A colleague tells her that Hannibal Lecter just called Jack, who rushed to the hospital to be with his wife. Realizing Hannibal isn't home, Beverly sees her chance. She breaks into his house to investigate. She finds a hidden basement and goes inside, where she discovers a freezer full of human meat and organs. She now knows the horrifying truth. As she turns around, she sees Hannibal standing right behind her. Terrified, she draws her gun and fires. After this, Hannibal, having murdered Beverly Katz, cooking her meat the next day. He invites Jack Crawford over for a meal and serves him Beverly's flesh, with Jack completely unaware. Jack thanks Hannibal for saving his wife's life, and Hannibal replies that he's a friend and did it because he doesn't want to see Jack suffer. Next, we see Freddie Lowndes heading towards a building after receiving a call from an anonymous number, which was actually Hannibal. When she gets there, she discovers Beverly's body, which has been sliced into sections. She immediately calls the FBI, and Jack arrives with his team. Freddie tells Jack the victim inside is an FBI agent. When Jack enters, he is horrified to see Beverly's corpse, precisely sectioned and displayed in glass containers. Jack breaks down as he was very close to Beverly. The entire FBI is in shock over her death, and Jack vows that they will not let her killer get away with it. A short while later, Jack and Alana Bloom visit Will Graham for the criminally insane to break the news about Beverly. Will tells Jack he needs to see the crime scene. Jack agrees and takes him there, removing his prison clothes and asking him to figure out what happened. As Will examines the scene, he hallucinates Beverly, who tells him to see her as just another piece of evidence. He reconstructs the crime. The killer brought her here, strangled her, froze her body to keep it rigid, and then used a cutter to slice her into sections, displaying them in containers as his design. Will tells Jack that he had warned Beverly not to get too close to the killer, but she must have figured something out, which is why she was killed. When Jack asks who the Chesapeake Ripper is, Will tells him he has to find out for himself, just as Beverly did. Will is taken back to the hospital, where Dr. Chilton interviews him. Chilton asks what he discussed with Beverly, and Will says he warned her to stay away from Hannibal. Chilton reveals that he knows both Will and Abel Gideon know the Ripper's identity. Will confirms this, saying they would both name the same person. He expresses a wish to speak with Gideon to learn the truth and piques Chilton's curiosity by asking if he isn't curious to know who the Ripper is. Intrigued, Chilton decides to take a step. Meanwhile, at the forensic lab, Beverly's body arrives, and the investigators are emotional. Jack tells them to stop blaming themselves for her death. They then reveal a key finding from the DNA test. The kidneys found with the body were not Beverly's. They were placed there. Her own kidneys were taken by the killer. We then see Hannibal, who has made a paste from Beverly's kidneys, cooked them into a dish and is eating them. Driven by curiosity, Chilton brings Abel Gideon, who is still alive, to his facility. Gideon asks Will what he wants. Will says he knows Gideon is aware of the Ripper's identity and asks him to reveal it. Gideon is hesitant, reminding Will that he tried to kill him. Will warns him that if he stays silent, the Chesapeake Ripper might kill him too. Gideon cryptically describes the Ripper as a devil who works in secret, like smoke that no one can see. Hannibal visits Chilton and is surprised to see Gideon. Chilton lies, claiming Gideon is there to help with Will's therapy. He tells Hannibal that Will feels misled by him and no longer wants to see him. Hannibal asks for permission to speak with Gideon, which Chilton grants. Hannibal approaches Gideon, pretending they've never met. He introduces himself as Dr. Lecter, a psychiatrist. Gideon plays along, saying it's a pleasure to meet him and adding that Will has a sharp mind and will surely catch the Chesapeake Ripper. As Hannibal leaves the hospital, he runs into Freddie Lowndes, who tells him Will has asked to see her. When Freddie meets Will, he asks for a favor. He knows the killer reads her articles and wants to use her website to send a message that he wants to talk. Freddie agrees, but only in exchange for the exclusive rights to his story. Will accepts. The next day, Freddie publishes an article stating that Will Graham wants to communicate with the killer who murdered the judge and the bailiff. Hannibal reads this, knowing exactly what Will is up to. Later, an orderly approaches Will in his cell, expressing his admiration for Will's work and the artistic way he kills his victims. Will immediately realizes this orderly is the copycat killer. The orderly tells Will he's disabled the listening devices. Will asks him why he killed the judge and the bailiff, and the orderly confesses he only killed the bailiff, not the judge. He considers Will a friend and wants to work with him. Will accepts his friendship and gives him a task: kill Hannibal Lecter. The orderly agrees. Gideon overhears their entire conversation. Later, Will has a vision of wings sprouting from his back, like an angel. Alana wakes him up, expressing her worry that he has publicly invited a killer to talk to him. Will tells her that Beverly's death is his fault because he warned her about Hannibal, but she went anyway, and Hannibal killed her. Alana gets angry at this accusation and leaves. On her way out, she sees Gideon on the security monitor and confronts Chilton. Chilton repeats his lie about Gideon being there for Will's therapy. Alana demands to see Gideon. When Alana meets Gideon, he tells her he can't reveal who gave him her address, but gives her a cryptic clue. Will has prepared a little bird to go out and get morsels for him. The first who gave him Alana's location. Will knows Chilton is listening and intends for this message to reach Jack. Chilton goes to Jack and plays the recording. Jack is skeptical, questioning why he should believe Gideon. Chilton insists Gideon is telling the truth, as he was able to describe Hannibal's dining room perfectly. He adds that Hannibal once served him tongue and joked about wanting to eat Chilton's. All of this points to Hannibal being a cannibal and confirms Will's claims. The autopsy of the Flower Man reveals water in his lungs that pinpoints the location of the murder. The FBI begins to investigate the area. Jack finds Alana playing with Will's dogs. She tells him she's done with Will for accusing Hannibal, a man she's known for years. Jack asks if she thinks Will is manipulating her, and she says she believes Will is lying. Hannibal visits Will, telling him he considered him a friend, but is furious that Will tried to have him killed. Will tells him to stop the act. He knows Hannibal manipulated him into believing he was a killer and murdered Beverly, and he won't let him get away with it. Hannibal cryptically says that whoever killed her also wants to be caught. Hannibal continues his murder spree, cooking elaborate dishes from his victim's flesh while Jack grows more desperate. Gideon is being transferred when Chilton tells him Jack is coming to see him. When Jack arrives, he asks Gideon about the recording. In a twist, Gideon lies, claiming Chilton coached him on what to say. Jack leaves, frustrated, and as Gideon is being transferred, 2 guards, paid off by Hannibal, beat him severely and throw him over a railing. That night, Hannibal hosts a dinner party. When Jack arrives, his eyes are fixed on the food, suspecting it's human meat. Chilton arrives and tells Jack to look at the dishes, saying he won't eat them because they look human. He tells Jack that Gideon was lying and that he now completely believes Will. When Hannibal greets Jack, Jack says he isn't hungry and asks to take some dishes home. Hannibal is startled, realizing they're onto him. As Jack leaves with the food, Hannibal looks at Chilton and gives him a slight wink, confirming Chilton's suspicions. Jack takes the food to his lab for testing. Meanwhile, Alana is with Hannibal, who is teaching her piano. She mentions that Jack is treating him like a suspect, and Hannibal blames Will. Alana says she'll never forgive Will for what he's put Hannibal through. Hannibal says Will was his only friend, and now they are both alone. They then kiss and become intimate. Later that night, while Alana is asleep, Hannibal checks to make sure she's in a deep sleep and then sneaks out. He goes to the hospital where Gideon is being treated, disguises himself as a nurse, and kidnaps him. The next morning, the FBI finds the body of a nurse at the hospital, hung up and with organs missing. They assume Gideon escaped and did it, but Jack knows that's impossible with Gideon's broken leg. The Ripper must have taken him. When Alana wakes up, she finds Hannibal beside her, having returned after completing his night's work. The doorbell rings. It's Jack, who questions Hannibal about Gideon's kidnapping. Hannibal claims he was home all night. When Jack asks if anyone can confirm his alibi, Alana emerges from the bedroom and says she can, as he was with her the entire night. Jack leaves, still suspicious. Next, we see Hannibal cooking Gideon's own leg and serving it to him, telling him it will be delicious since it was prepared in clay. Gideon understands he's about to die and forces himself to eat his own leg, remarking on how tasty it is. Back at the lab, the investigators tell Jack that the food from the party tested negative for human DNA. However, they found samples in the tree man that matched the lures found in Will's fishing box, lures made from the flesh of the original victims Will was framed for killing. This is the proof Jack needs. Will is innocent. The same killer is at work. They also find bark on the tree from a specific forest in Virginia where there is only one cabin. When Jack and his team raid the cabin, they find a woman in a cellar pit. It's Miriam Lass, alive, but with one arm missing. The episode ends with Hannibal calmly playing his piano, as everything has gone according to his plan. The 7th episode begins with the FBI team having successfully rescued Miriam Lass. However, when they examine her, they find no forensic evidence at all. A short while later, Jack Crawford visits Miriam to apologize, as he feels responsible for her situation. Miriam tells him not to blame himself, insisting that it was all her own fault. Jack then asks the crucial question, does she remember who the Chesapeake Ripper is? Miriam tells him she remembers nothing. She explains that the Ripper was performing therapies on her, and all she can recall is a bright light. Besides that, her memory is a blank. Jack is stunned by this, wondering how they will ever catch the Ripper now. Believing the Ripper is Hannibal Lecter, Jack arranges for Hannibal to be brought in for Miriam to identify. With Miriam on the other side of a one-way mirror, Alana Bloom begins to question Hannibal. Hannibal asks if he's been brought here for Miriam to see him, and Alana confirms it. Hearing this, Hannibal walks right up to the glass and tells her to get a good look. As Miriam sees his face up close, she tells Jack, it's not him. That's not the Ripper. Meanwhile, Dr. Chilton visits Will Graham, who has just been released from the Baltimore State Hospital for the criminally insane. All charges against Will have been dropped now that the FBI knows the real Chesapeake Ripper is still at large. As Will is leaving, he warns Chilton to be careful, suggesting he could be Hannibal's next target. He points out that Beverly Katz went to Chilton for help, and now he is doing the same, which could put Chilton in danger. Will tells Chilton that if he wants to save himself, he should go to Jack and tell him everything he knows about Hannibal. Chilton asks a simple question, why didn't Hannibal just kill you? Will replies, because he wants to be my friend. Outside, Will is met by Jack, who apologizes for misjudging him. He tells Will that they found Miriam alive, though the Ripper had amputated one of her arms. Hearing this, Will asks Jack to take him to the location where Miriam was found. When Will examines the scene, he tells Jack that the Ripper intentionally led them there. It was all part of his plan. He wanted them to find Miriam because he's planning something much bigger. As Will puts himself in the killer's mind, he sees it all. The killer brought the tree to this location, placed a human body inside its trunk, and filled the torso with poisonous flowers, allowing them to grow into a gruesome tree. Miriam herself was kept alive in a pit nearby. When Jack asks what he saw, Will explains that the Ripper didn't bring Miriam here to kill her, but rather to ensure she would be found. Jack asks, do you still think it was Hannibal? Will says yes. Jack reminds him that Miriam confirmed it wasn't Hannibal, but Will counters, Hannibal is a psychiatrist. In 2 years, he could easily erase her memory. We can't trust what she says. Later, Will goes home and finds Alana, who had been taking care of his dogs. Alana is happy to see him and admits she used to think he was the killer, but now knows he's a good person. Will tells her he was never the person she thought he was. Alana says she thought he was crazy because he tried to have Hannibal killed. Will insists it was necessary because Hannibal is a monster. Alana defends Hannibal, saying he's a good man and that Will is wrong about him. From her defense, Will immediately understands that she is dating Hannibal. He warns her that Hannibal is not a man to be trusted and that she needs to stay away from him. Elsewhere, Chilton goes to see Jack. He tells him that he also believes Hannibal is the Ripper. He explains that Hannibal has used therapies on Will that are known to erase memories, suggesting everything Will experienced was planted in his mind by Hannibal. Chilton also offers to help restore Miriam's memory. Jack, however, tells him he can't allow it, as Miriam isn't his patient. Will then visits Miriam himself. He asks if she remembers anything at all. She says she's tried, but nothing comes back. Will tells her he has the same problem, explaining that a psychiatrist messed with his mind, causing him to lose time and memory. He suggests that the man who did this to both of them is the same person. Hearing this, Miriam says she remembers one thing, a bright light. The Ripper would stand in front of it and tell her to do things. Will says he remembers the light too, and vows to catch the killer. That night, when Hannibal returns home, he finds Will waiting for him, aiming a gun at him. Just as Will is about to shoot, Hannibal calmly says he knows Will isn't a killer and won't pull the trigger. Will replies that he enjoys killing killers and he will kill him. Hannibal then plays his card, asking, "Aren't you curious to find out why that psychiatrist did this to you?" Will admits that he is. Hannibal tells him that if he is that psychiatrist and Will kills him, he'll never get the answers he's looking for. Convinced by his own curiosity, Will lowers the gun, leaves Hannibal alive, and walks away. The next day, Jack brings Miriam to Hannibal's office, hoping Hannibal can help her retrieve her memories. Being in the office triggers something, and Miriam recalls that this might be the place she disappeared from. She remembers a painting and then nothing. Hannibal attempts to hypnotize her to help her remember what happened. Under hypnosis, Miriam recalls a moment when she almost escaped the killer. She found her phone and called Jack. Hannibal asks her what the last thing she saw was. She tells him she saw the wound man drawing. The following day, at the forensics lab, they find Hannibal's fingerprints on the flower petals from the crime scene. They report this to Jack, who immediately concludes that Hannibal can't be the killer. He remembers Will telling him that Hannibal works in the shadows and would never leave evidence. This means someone must have planted Hannibal's fingerprints there to frame him. At that moment, Jack realizes that Dr. Chilton perfectly fits the Ripper's profile. He's a former surgeon, a psychiatrist, and he knows the details of all their cases. Suspecting Chilton may have also kidnapped Abel Gideon, Jack sends 2 FBI agents to his house. When Chilton arrives home, he senses someone is there. He enters his room and finds Gideon's mutilated body, with flesh carved from it. Terrified, he turns to run, only to come face to face with Hannibal, who chloroforms him. Just then, the FBI agents arrive. Hannibal opens the door and kills them both. When Chilton awakens, he's holding a gun, and his clothes are covered in blood. He goes outside and sees that Hannibal has killed the FBI team, perfectly framing him for everything. Horrified, Chilton gets in his car and speeds to Will's house, the only person he thinks might believe and help him. When Jack and his team arrive at Chilton's house, they find a mountain of evidence pointing to Chilton as the Ripper. Meanwhile, a frantic Chilton tells Will he has to leave the country because Hannibal has framed him and he'll be killed. Will tells him not to run, promising to prove his innocence. Suddenly, Chilton hears Jack's car approaching and asks Will, "What have you done?" Will admits he called Jack, believing he would help. Feeling betrayed, Chilton pulls a gun on Will. Will, echoing Hannibal's words, tells him, "I know you're not a killer. You can't shoot me." Just then, Jack enters. Will tells him Chilton isn't the real killer, but Chilton has already fled out the back. Jack sees him running and gives chase. When Jack corners him and aims his gun, Chilton surrenders like a cornered animal. During his interrogation, Chilton begs to speak to Will, but the examiners refuse, telling him he's the killer and no one will help him. Afterwards, Chilton is taken to a room where they are going to have Miriam identify him. The moment Miriam sees Chilton, a memory flashes in her mind. She screams that he is the one, that he is the Ripper. She grabs Jack's gun and shoots Chilton multiple times, killing him on the spot. As the narrator explains, everything went exactly according to Hannibal's plan. He framed Chilton for everything and closed the chapter on the Chesapeake Ripper. The next day, Will goes to see Hannibal and tells him he wants to continue his therapy. Hannibal asks, "Are you still my friend?" Will coldly replies, "I'm just your patient." Then we see Will and Jack ice fishing. Will tells Jack about a local fish that gets caught even though it isn't hungry. Jack asks how that's possible, and Will explains that they're caught using live baits. The excitement of the live bait makes the fish make a fatal mistake. It gets hooked and then it's caught. Will is indirectly talking about Hannibal, comparing him to a fish that he plans to bait and catch. Jack agrees to help him, determined to finally catch their fish. Later, Hannibal has Will and Jack over for dinner, serving them the same type of fish. Will apologizes to Hannibal, admitting he was wrong to think he was the killer and for trying to have him murdered. Hannibal says he has already forgotten about it and still considers Will his friend. The scene then shifts to a stable where a horse is sick. Its owner has called a vet, pointing out that the horse's stomach has been mysteriously stitched up. When the vet opens the stitches, they find the body of a young woman inside, and he runs away in terror. The FBI is called, and Hannibal tells Jack the killer's motive might might be a twisted form of rebirth, coming from a womb and dying in a womb. He explains that the killer put the murdered woman inside the horse's stomach for this reason. The examiners find struggle marks on the girl's neck, indicating she was strangled. Hannibal tells Jack that no one on their team can think like this killer, and the only person who can get inside his head is Will, so they will need his help. Next, we see a woman named Margot in a therapy session with Hannibal. Her brother is abusive, and she tells Hannibal that he attacked her, so she fought back, but he is still alive. Hannibal asks about their relationship, and Margot explains that her brother is still filled with rage towards her. Hannibal then asks if she would try to kill him again. Margot cryptically asks if he wants her to confess to everything, even a potential murder she might have committed that morning. She tells him she simply wants to protect herself. That night, Alana and Hannibal are intimate. Afterwards, Alana says she feels bad for being wrong about Will. Hannibal reminds her that Will is the man who tried to have him killed, so she shouldn't feel guilty. He adds that he will take care of himself and his patients. Alana says she is still worried about him because she thinks Will might still believe he's the killer. Meanwhile, during the post-mortem on the girl from the horse, they learn her name was Sarah and she had been reported missing. When they look inside her mouth, they find soil. They are all shocked, but when an officer touches her chest, he realizes her heart is beating. Jack touches her as well and feels movement inside. They cut her chest open and a live starling bird bursts out. Jack sends Will to the stable to investigate. Using his empathy, Will reconstructs the killer's actions. He understands that the killer approached the sick horse, wanting to use it. He then brought the dead girl's body and told her he was giving her a new life. Jack asks Will what he saw, and Will explains that the killer was creating a coffin birth for the bird. He placed a bird's egg inside the dead woman, then put her body inside the horse so the bird could be born. This tells him the killer has medical knowledge of animals, which is how he succeeded. Following this, Will and Jack visit the owner of a nearby pet shop. They tell him they are from the FBI and want to ask him some questions. They show him a photo of Sarah, and his shocked reaction gives him away, though he lies and says he doesn't know her. Will tells him a bird was found inside the girl's body. The man immediately asks if it was alive. When Will says yes, the man is overjoyed. Outside, Jack wants to arrest him, but Will says he's not the killer. He believes this man knows who is. Will later discusses the case with Hannibal, explaining the killer's desire to give the girl a new life by making the bird her heartbeat, allowing her to be reborn. Hannibal asks Will if he has been reborn. Will says that last time Hannibal tried to destroy him, but he won't let it happen again. He tells Hannibal to stop pretending and lying, because he knows something is wrong with him and he will find out what. Hannibal asks if Will try to kill him again. Will says he doesn't want to kill him anymore. Now, he finds him interesting. That night, the FBI finds a field full of graves of more of the killer's victims. Will tells Jack it's the work of the same killer. Jack says that if the pet shop owner knows who the killer is, they need to convince him to talk. Meanwhile, Margot tells Hannibal that her brother assaulted her again, and her family forgave him because he's their biological son, while she is adopted. They think she is weird and don't love her. Hannibal tells her it's normal to be weird and that he is much weirder than her. He suggests that if she thinks her brother will hurt her again, she can kill him herself or find someone to kill him for her. Will brings the starling to the pet shop owner and says the bird is safe. He tells the man he can keep the bird, explaining that it is Sarah reborn and that he knows the man can identify the killer. Crying, the man tells them who the killer is. The FBI brings the killer in for investigation, and Alana questions him. The killer answers calmly, but they know he's lying. When Alana touches his hand, he flinches, and a look of anger flashes across his face, revealing his hatred for women. They now know he is the killer, but with no hard evidence, they have to let him go. That night, the pet shop owner returns to his shop to find all his animals missing. He runs to the stable and finds the dead body of the horse from the crime scene. The real killer, his friend, is standing there with a hammer. He asks the man why he told the police. The man, emotional, says he was overwhelmed. The killer tells him this was the same horse that injured him, and now he has killed it. The man weeps over the horse, saying animals never hurt people intentionally. Suddenly filled with rage, he attacks the killer. When Hannibal and Will arrive, they find the man stitching up the horse's stomach. Will realizes his friend, the killer, must be inside. The man says he was helping his friend so he wouldn't kill anymore. Will takes him aside and asks why he killed him. The man says he didn't. He could never kill anyone. He only attacked him and put him inside the horse, and that he's still alive. Meanwhile, Hannibal is in the stable and witnesses the killer emerging from inside the horse's carcass. Just as Will arrives and points his gun at the killer, the man begs for his life. As Will pulls the trigger, Hannibal places his own hand in front of the gun's hammer, stopping it from firing. He takes the gun from Will and tells him to stop seeing himself in the killer, warning that if he continues, he'll get trapped again, just like when he killed Hobbs. Scene begins with Will having a dream where he's tied Hannibal to a tree. Hannibal asks him why he wants to kill him, and Will replies that he knows Hannibal is the devil and can't let him live. Then, Hannibal blows a whistle, and a monstrous creature starts pulling on a rope, strangling him. At that moment, Will sees Hannibal as the devil and reminds him that he promised to get his revenge. Saying this, he blows another whistle, and the creature pulls the rope tighter, killing Hannibal. Will then wakes up, feeling a great sense of peace from the dream because he truly wants to kill Hannibal. The next morning, Hannibal makes omelets for Jack. Hannibal asks what Jack wants to forget, and Jack admits he used to doubt Hannibal was the killer and wants to forget that thought. He also says he had doubts about Will and wants to forget that, too. Hannibal assures him that Will is now officially his patient and he will take care of him. Then we see a new murder. A truck driver is at a gas station getting his truck when a strange creature appears on the roof. Hearing a noise, he gets scared and goes outside with a light to see who is there. When he looks up at the truck, the creature pulls him up and tears him apart, killing him. The next morning, Will goes to see Hannibal, who asks him what he regrets. Will says he regrets not killing the muralist when he had the chance because he believes it would have brought him the same sense of peace as when he killed Hobbs. Hannibal tells him he has now adapted and that he will help him evolve until he becomes. He tells Will to close his eyes and imagine he killed the muralist. Will does this and feels a great sense of peace. He then tells Hannibal he has also thought about killing him and that it will feel very good when he does. When Hannibal asks what he gets from killing murderers, Will says, "I feel powerful." Hannibal's plan to corrupt Will is working, and Will, knowing this, is slowly joining him. As Will leaves, he runs into Margot, who is there to see Hannibal. She tells Will she knows who he is, and he replies that everyone knows who he is, but he wasn't a criminal. Inside, Margot asks Hannibal what he prescribed for Will Graham, noting that Will was very supportive when she talked about murdering her brother, even telling her she should have killed him. She asks what kind of psychiatrist allows his patients to commit murder. Hannibal simply replies that she knows very well what kind of psychiatrist he is. Meanwhile, the FBI is at the crime scene, baffled. The agents tell Jack it must have been a wolf or a bear, but no meat was eaten. Hannibal suggests that maybe someone trained an animal to commit murder for them. Hearing this, Will tells Jack that, if that's the case, the killer will hunt again. Afterward, Will takes the case file to Peter, who has an expert knowledge of animals. Peter looks at the photos and says the murder was done by both a bear and a wolf. When Will asks if a bear and wolf can hunt together, Peter says it depends on how the trainer teaches his animals. He also says that animals and humans are the same, so they shouldn't blame the animals for the murder. We are then shown the killer, who sees himself as an animal. He has built an animal suit to commit his murders. He puts on the suit, goes to a location, and spots a couple spending quality time together. He attacks the man and kills him. The girl runs, but the killer catches her and kills her too. The next day, the FBI finds the two bodies and starts investigating. Will uses his ability to get inside the killer's mind. He realizes the killer sees himself as an animal and has built a tool to carry out the murders. He first killed the man, and when the girl ran, he killed her as well. When Jack asks what he saw, Will explains that the killer is a psychopath who thinks he's an animal and has built a weapon or suit to commit the murders. He suspects the killer is an engineering student with a deep knowledge of animals. Later, Will goes to see Hannibal and tells him about the case. Hannibal says this must be part of the killer's instinct. Since he sees himself as an animal, his job is to hunt. Hannibal then asks Will if he has ever imagined killing someone with his bare hands or if he enjoys killing with a gun. Will replies that gun murders don't feel complete, but there's a different kind of peace in killing with your own hands. Hannibal then asks if he's ever imagined strangling him. Will says that when he does kill him, he wants to do it with his bare hands, not a gun. He also tells Hannibal he wants to kill him because he's been hiding, and he knows very well that Hannibal is the killer. At the forensics department, after the autopsies, they discover the murders were the work of a large animal, meaning the killer built a suit of a large animal to commit his crimes. When Dr. Lecter arrives, Jack asks if he's ever seen a killer who builds a suit to murder people. Hearing this, Lecter pulls Jack aside and tells him about a teenage boy who came to him for therapy once. The boy wanted to become an animal, fully believing he was one, and had had confessed he wanted to kill humans too. When Jack asks if he was insane, Hannibal says no, he just wanted to become an animal. Hannibal then gives Jack the boy's name, and that night, he goes to meet the boy himself. The boy is happy to see Lecter. Hannibal tells him he liked his work and had seen the bodies he had so skillfully carved up. The boy asks what he's talking about, and Hannibal tells him he knows he's the one committing the murders. Hannibal manipulates him with his words and tells him he has a job for him. The next day, Jack and Will go to the museum to meet Randall. They question him about the murder, but Randall denies any involvement. He says he used to be a mental patient who wanted to become an animal, but Dr. Lecter's therapy cured him completely. When Will hears this, he realizes Randall's therapy was a success, and he connects with him because he also suffers from a mental illness. That night, Margot comes to Will's house. Will lets her in and serves her wine. When he asks why she's there, Margot tells him her brother is the sole heir to all their property. Her brother does whatever he wants, which is why she wants to kill him. She asks Will for his opinion on Dr. Lecter's therapy. Will says Lecter treats his patients in a unique way. Margot says she has a strange feeling about Dr. Lecter because he advised her to kill her brother, and if she failed, he told her to try again. Will understands everything but says nothing. The next day, Will goes to Hannibal and says Randall is a success story because he beat his mental illness and was treated. He also tells Hannibal he's very confused because his own psychiatrist came to see him in jail and told him she believed him. Will asks Hannibal if he killed her. Hannibal says he didn't. Will then asks what Hannibal thinks about when he murders someone. Hannibal says he thinks about God. He explains that God is neither good nor evil because he does both. The collapse of a church roof killed 65 people. Was that God's goodness or evil? All he knows is that he enjoys doing what God does, whether it's murder or a good deed. Will is stunned to hear this and realizes this is how Hannibal thinks. That night, Hannibal takes Randall to Will's house and tells him to kill Will. Will's dogs start barking, and when he opens the door to look outside, his small dog runs out. Will follows with a gun. He finds his dog, injured as if attacked by an animal. Then he sees Randall, who is about to attack him. Will takes his dog back inside and turns off all the lights. Randall then smashes through the window and attacks Will, and the scene cuts. In the next scene, we see Will at Hannibal's house. He has killed Randall and placed his dead body on Hannibal's dining table. When Hannibal arrives, Will tells him, "Now we're even," because when Will was in jail, Hannibal sent a man to kill him, and now Will has sent a man to kill him. So they are even. Scene opens by showing us exactly how Will killed Randall. When Randall crashes through his window and attacks, Will manages to fight back. As Will aims his gun at Randall, he sees him transform into Hannibal in his devilish Wendigo form. He tosses his gun aside, wanting to kill him with his bare hands. He brutally attacks Randall, punching him repeatedly, all the while imagining he is finally killing Hannibal. He then breaks Randall's neck, killing him, and finds immense satisfaction in the act. Later, Hannibal asks Will if he killed Randall with his bare hands. Will confirms it, adding that he enjoyed it. Hannibal tends to Will's bruised hands and tells him that Will must now support him. Will agrees, saying he has no other choice. Hannibal then asks if Will was fantasizing about killing him during the act, and Will admits that yes, he was, and it felt incredible. Hannibal tells Will that by killing Randall, he has indebted him, and asks how he plans to repay that debt. To repay this debt, Will butchers Randall's body and stages it inside a cave bear skeleton at the museum. The next day, when Jack arrives at the museum, he is horrified by the gruesome display. He calls in his team and asks Will to profile the scene to figure out how the killer did it. For the first time, however, the killer is not someone else, it's Will himself. In his imagination, he speaks with Randall's spirit. Randall is happy, saying he is finally an animal. Will tells him that since he wanted to become an animal, Will made him one completely. Randall says he has now reached reality and is very happy. Will then lies to Jack, explaining that the killer, whoever he is, must have known Randall. He claims the real killer murdered Randall because Randall was committing all the other murders. Hannibal agrees with Will's story, which leaves Jack looking very suspicious of both of them. Afterward, Will visits the tabloid journalist, Freddie Lowndes, at her house. He asks her how her story is coming along. Freddie says that Hollywood is very interested in her story, and if she gives them the rights, they will pay her a lot of money. She then asks Will why he has returned to therapy with Hannibal, reminding him that he used to believe Hannibal was the Chesapeake Ripper and even tried to have him killed. Will tells her he was wrong about Hannibal because he is not the Ripper. Freddie argues that Dr. Chilton wasn't the Ripper either, as he didn't have the necessary surgical knowledge. She discovered from his college records that his hands used used to shake so much when he first cut into a human that he became a psychiatrist instead. She asks Will if he thinks Dr. Chilton could have killed Abigail, and Will says he doesn't think so either. Meanwhile, Margot goes to Hannibal for therapy. Hannibal tells her the reason she can't kill her brother is because she still loves him. Margot says that after their father's death, he made her brother the sole beneficiary of their estate, meaning all the property will go to him even if he dies. Hearing this, Hannibal suggests that if she creates her own legacy, the property might come to her. He is telling her to get pregnant, which would produce an heir for the family. The next day, Margot is at home when her brother Mason comes to see her. Mason tells her he has created a new design that will make her very happy. He has brought a special breed of pigs to his farm that eat humans. He keeps the pigs in a cage and has his servant throw a dummy made of human flesh in front of them. The pigs devour it completely. Margot is terrified, realizing this is a truly evil act. Her brother says the pigs are his creation, and if their father were alive, he would have been very happy to see it. That night, Alana and Hannibal are spending time alone, where Hannibal teaches her how to create music in the air. At the same time, Margot comes to see Will, telling him they are both the same because they both have scars on their bodies. She has come to seduce Will because Hannibal told her she needed a child for her family's legacy. As they get intimate, Will imagines he is with Alana, the woman he still loves. He then sees a vision of the devilish Hannibal holding a baby. The next morning, Freddie Lounds meets with Alana and tells her she thinks Will and Hannibal have become a team and that they are committing murders together so no one finds out. Alana says that's impossible. Freddie insists that she believes Hannibal Lecter is the Ripper, pointing out that 4 of Hannibal's patients have been murdered recently, which can't be a coincidence. Alana is disturbed by this and tells Freddie that Hannibal is helping Will. Freddie replies that Will isn't getting help, he's joining him. Meanwhile, Mason invites Hannibal to his farm to meet him, wanting to see his sister's therapist for himself. When Hannibal arrives, he admires Mason's pigs and praises him, saying they look like a very different breed. Mason tells him they are his own creation because these pigs eat meat. He then asks Hannibal what his sister says about him. Hannibal replies that conversations between a patient and doctor are confidential, and he cannot tell anyone. He also says that if Mason wants therapy, he can come to him as well. Mason is happy to hear this and offers him one of his pigs as a gift. That night, Hannibal cooks the meat from that same pig and serves it to Alana and Will. Alana tells them that Freddie came to see her that day and thinks they are killing people together. Hannibal tells Alana that Freddie is very wrong because she has no boundaries. She thinks anything and has strayed far from the truth. Alana says their relationship is very strange. They are a doctor and a patient, but also friends and enemies. Hearing this, Will tells Alana that they both know very well where they stand, so she should stop worrying about them. The next day, Hannibal waits at Freddie Lounds' house to kill her when she arrives. However, Freddie has gone to Will's house to investigate, but finds no one there. She then goes to his barn and breaks the lock. Inside, she finds Randall's animal suit. She takes a picture and then notices a freezer. When she opens it, she finds Randall's butchered corpse. She gets very scared, and just then, Will arrives. She points her gun at him and tells him to stay away. Will tries to calm her down, asking her to just listen to him once, but Freddie shoots at him, and Will ducks to save himself. As Freddie runs away, Will tries to catch her, but she sprays him in the eyes and runs. She gets into her car and frantically calls Jack, but just then, Will arrives and attacks her. A little later, Jack calls Will, Alana, and Hannibal into his office and plays them Freddie's frantic phone call, in which she was screaming. He tells them the call was traced to the area around Will's house and that her phone has been off since then. She's missing. Will says his house is in a very remote location, so maybe one of her enemies kidnapped her. That night, Will brings a piece of meat to Hannibal and tells him to make a spectacular dish out of it. When Hannibal asks what meat it is, Will says it's pig's meat. Hannibal understands that it's surely Freddie Lounds' meat. He asks Will to help him cook, and when he hands Will a knife, Will has a strange feeling. They make a dish from the meat and eat it. Hannibal tells Will that after eating the meat of this animal, he realized the animal was very scared. Will replies that the meat is quite sour because the animal is dead. Hannibal asks if it's really pig's meat, and Will says it's the meat of a long pig. He also tells Hannibal that he has killed both good and evil, just as God does. Then, we see Hannibal and Will's faces merge into one, showing that they have become the same. Scene open with Will having a dream. In it, a demonic Hannibal kills the stag from his dreams, and from inside the stag's stomach, a version of Will emerges, now with antlers himself. This symbolizes that he too has become a devil. That night, Hannibal invites Will over for dinner and serves him a very rare, delicious bird. As Will eats it, he finds the taste exquisite. He tells Hannibal that killing Freddie Lounds felt just like this, as if he was confused about whether he should have killed her or not. Hannibal asks if his heart was racing when he killed her. Will says no. Hearing this, Hannibal concludes that if Will's heart rate was that low, it means he has the capacity for violence and his mind remains perfectly calm while killing. Next, we're taken to a parking lot where a guard is on duty. He sees a burning body in a wheelchair rolling toward him, which turns out to be Freddie Lowndes. He calls the FBI, who begin their investigation. The forensics department confirms to Jack that the body is indeed Freddie Lowndes and that she was killed 24 hours prior. The killer had cut out a muscle from her back and taken it with him. Hearing this, Jack asks Will for his thoughts. Will suggests that one of Freddie Lowndes' many enemies did it. He reasons that since she burned many people's lives with her journalism, the killer took revenge by burning her. The next day, Margot and Will go to Hannibal and inform him that they are having a baby. Hannibal is stunned, as he had no idea they had been intimate. Margot tells them she didn't think Will would care so much about a child, especially since her own brother, Mason Verger, hates children. We then see Mason at his farm, where some school children are visiting. Mason is a child molester who despises children. He gives a carrot to one of the boys and tells him to feed it to a horse. He then asks the boy if he's adopted, and when the boy says yes, Mason taunts him, saying his parents don't love him, which makes the child cry. The following morning, Alana visits Will, saying she's worried about him because she thinks he's the one who killed Freddie Lowndes. Will cynically replies that when he told everyone Hannibal was the killer, no one believed him, so why would they believe her if she said he was the killer? He hands Alana a gun, telling her she might need it someday because she can't trust him or Hannibal. Meanwhile, Mason is at his therapy session with Hannibal, telling him about his father. His father always carried a knife to test the depth of a pig's skin. Mason says his father made him do the same things, which is why their meatpacking company is so successful today. He declares that he is the sole owner of the company and no one can take it from him. It's at this moment that Hannibal reveals to Mason that Margot is pregnant with Will's child, meaning they could potentially take his property. Hearing this, Mason becomes agitated and starts planning to do something terrible. That evening, Will attends Freddie's funeral, where he meets Alana. She confronts him, asking why he's at the funeral of the person he killed. Will tells her that his psychiatrist suggested it would give him a sense of peace. He adds that everything he is doing is at the direction of his psychiatrist. Alana doesn't believe him, as she trusts Hannibal, and she walks away. Later, Will visits Hannibal again. Hannibal asks what kind of father he wants to be. Will says he wants to be a good father because he already lost one child, whose name was Abigail. He asks Hannibal why he killed Abigail. Hannibal replies that he had no other choice. Hearing this, Will starts to cry, and Hannibal apologizes for killing her. That night, the FBI finds another burned body and begins investigating. The examiners tell Jack that whoever killed Freddie Lowndes also killed this person, as the body was burned in the exact same pattern. Alana tells Jack there must be a connection between Randall and Freddie Lowndes, and that Randall's killer must also be Freddie's. Will argues that Freddie had many enemies, so it wasn't necessarily the same killer. The next morning, Mason visits his sister, Margot, and tells her he knows about the baby in her womb. He says she wants the baby so her child can inherit a share of his money. Margot insists she just wants a descendant for their family line. Mason retorts that he wants his own child to be the owner of everything, not her child. Will goes to see Hannibal and asks him why he tells so many lies and how many more he plans to tell. Hannibal responds that a killer should only lie as much as is necessary. Will then asks him which god he prays to, and Hannibal says he doesn't pray to any god. Just then, we see a vision of a large devil sitting in the room with them, implying Hannibal worships the devil himself. The next day, Mason Verger returns for another session with Hannibal and talks about how bad he felt when his father used to kill the pigs. Hannibal says that if you think about the pig's happiness, you can't eat it. He then asks Mason what he plans to do about Margot. Mason says that Margot wants him to kill her, but he absolutely can't do that. Hannibal then instigates him, pointing out that if Mason dies, all the property will go to Margot's son, which could be a threat to him. A short while later, Alana comes to see Hannibal and asks about Will. Hannibal says he's just helping Will get some clarity. He asks if she doubts his therapy methods. Alana admits she has started to doubt everything and feels like everyone is lying to her. Hearing this, Hannibal takes her hand and kisses it, at which point he smells gunpowder. He realizes Alana has been practicing shooting, which means she knows she's in danger. He asks her why she's learning to shoot, and Alana says she no longer trusts anyone. Meanwhile, Margot packs her bags to run away from Mason so he can't catch her. But as she's driving, Mason's servant rams into her car, causing an accident. When she wakes up, she finds herself in an operating theater with Mason Verger standing over her. He tells her she made a big mistake by plotting against him, and now he's going to take her child from her, as his doctors suggested it. The doctors then perform an abortion, leaving Margot devastated. Alana goes to see Jack and tells him she's confused about everything and feels like everyone is lying. Jack asks her why. Alana Alana says she knows for a fact that Will killed Freddie Lowndes and that she doesn't trust Hannibal Lecter either because she doesn't really know him. Hearing this, Jack tells her to come with him and leads her to a room where she sees Freddie Lowndes, still alive. She finally understands that this is all part of Jack and Will's plan to catch Hannibal. When Will sees what has happened to Margot, he is filled with rage, having lost a child for the second time. Hannibal comes to him and provokes him, telling him to kill Mason Verger because he's the one who took his second child. Will goes to Mason and beats him severely. He is about to throw him into the pigpen but stops. He tells Mason that he and Margot have one thing in common. They're psychiatrists and that he's the one orchestrating everything. He explains that Hannibal first told Margot to have a baby, then provoked Mason to take the baby from her, and has now sent Will to kill him. But Will says he won't do it because he won't listen to his psychiatrist anymore. With that, Will leaves and Mason is left furious at Hannibal. Then Will visits Hannibal. Hannibal asks him why he didn't kill Mason Verger and why he told Mason about his plan. Will says he was curious to see what Mason would do. He then asks Hannibal why he wanted Mason dead. Hannibal simply says he doesn't like Mason, and that's why he wanted him to die. Will says that now Mason will come to kill him, so he'll have to kill Mason first. Hannibal tells him to close his eyes and imagine how he would do it. Will closes his eyes and pictures himself hanging Hannibal, slitting his throat and throwing him to his man-eating pigs. The vision brings Will great pleasure, and Hannibal tells him to remember that feeling. After that, Mason comes for a therapy session with Hannibal. Hannibal asks what he learned in his childhood. Mason says he learned about sacrifice, explaining that even God makes sacrifices, but his ways are beyond our understanding. His father taught him to hide everything so that no one could get the upper hand. He then pulls out his knife and holds it to Hannibal's neck. Hannibal asks if he's planning to measure his skin today instead of a pig's. Mason says no, not today. He asks what Will and Hannibal are planning, and then slashes Hannibal's sofa. Hannibal becomes furious, as he loves cleanliness. He says nothing, and Mason just laughs like a madman. Later, Will and Hannibal visit Margot. She tells them her brother left a scar on her back to remind her not to try anything like that again. She says she won't try to kill her brother anymore because, besides him, she has no one. She will let him do whatever he wants and won't stop him. Hannibal asks if by doing this, she's trying to prove she still has her humanity. Margot says there's no other solution. That evening, Will meets with Jack, who asks if he has any evidence against Hannibal. Will says Hannibal is too clever and hasn't given him any proof yet. Jack reminds Will that he killed a man and displayed his body in a museum. If the FBI finds out, they will arrest him, so they need to catch Hannibal before that happens. Will claims he killed the man in self-defense and displayed the body to make Hannibal happy. He also says Hannibal is trying to manipulate him into murdering Mason Verger, but he won't be manipulated. Instead, he will manipulate Hannibal. After this, Jack and Will bring in Hannibal's psychiatrist for questioning. Will asks her why she left Hannibal. She tells him she thinks Hannibal is a very dangerous man. Will then asks why she came to him in jail and told him she believed him. She explains she knew he wasn't a killer because the way Hannibal described him made her suspect that Hannibal himself was manipulating him. Will asks about the attack on her, and she says she believes Hannibal arranged it, and when she had no other choice, she killed her own patient. Will points out that if that's true, she committed murder. The woman replies that she killed him in self-defense. She also warns Will that if he thinks he can manipulate Hannibal, he's completely wrong. Because if that's the case, it's not him manipulating Hannibal, but Hannibal allowing himself to be manipulated by him. That night, Will goes to see Hannibal. Hannibal tells him that he is now fully awake and understands who he truly is. He says they both have an opportunity to leave this place. Will asks why he would leave with him. He was close to Abigail, and Hannibal took her from him. He was happy about having a child, and Hannibal took that from him too. He turned Alana and Jack against him. In short, Hannibal takes away everyone he loves. Hearing this, Hannibal says he has only given Will's perspective a place in his own mind. He thinks and acts just like Will, but he does it all for Will's own good. Will replies that Hannibal is just as lonely as he is and wants him to be his friend, which is probably why he's doing all of this. Meanwhile, Jack is interviewing Hannibal's psychiatrist. She tells him he can't protect Will Graham because Hannibal thinks Will is a killer, but the truth is, Hannibal already knows everything. If Jack thinks Hannibal is in the dark, he's mistaken, because Hannibal is always one step ahead. This frightens Jack, who becomes worried for Will. Later, Jack goes to Hannibal's house for dinner. Hannibal has prepared a special dish. He asks Jack if he still has doubts about Will. Jack replies that Alana has doubts about both of them. She thinks Will killed Freddie Lowndes and wants Jack to believe it too. Hannibal advises him to leave everything to God. Jack says he feels like everyone is lying. Hannibal jokes that whoever is lying, he will eat them. The next morning, Mason comes to meet Will with a plan in mind. When Hannibal is in his office drawing, Mason sends his men in. Seeing them, Hannibal attacks, slashing one man with a the knife. However, he is caught by the other man who knocks him unconscious. When Hannibal wakes up, he finds himself tied up and hanging. He asks the man if the person he killed is still alive. The man gets furious because the person who died was his brother. Just then, Mason and Will arrive, and Hannibal is shocked to see them together. Mason tells Hannibal he thought they would kill each other, but since they both know Hannibal is manipulating them, they're gonna kill him instead. They plan to first slit his throat, let the blood drain, and then feed him to his own pigs. Mason hands Will a knife and tells him to cut Hannibal's throat. As Will approaches Hannibal to cut his throat, he instead cuts the rope, freeing Hannibal. Hannibal is free and attacks everyone. One of the men hits Will on the head, knocking him out. When Will wakes up, he finds blood everywhere. Hannibal has killed everyone and escaped. It turns out Hannibal took Mason with him and gave him a hallucinogenic drug. The drug makes Mason go completely mad and obey Hannibal's every command. He asks Hannibal what he gave him, and Hannibal just tells him to listen to his voice. That night, Will returns home to find Mason there, cutting off pieces of his own face and feeding them to Will's dogs. Hannibal arrives, and Will asks him what he has done. Hannibal explains that he gave Mason an opportunity, which he failed to take, so now he is punishing him. Mason then says he's hungry. Hannibal tells him to cut off his own nose and eat it. Mason does exactly that and says his nose is delicious. Hannibal asks Will what they should do with him. Will says that since Mason is his patient, he should decide. Hearing this, Hannibal breaks Mason's spine and knocks him unconscious. The next day, Agent Crawford visits Mason, who is undergoing medical treatment. Mason is now completely paralyzed, and his face is destroyed. Jack asks him if he was a patient of Hannibal Lecter and if Hannibal did this to him. Mason Verger says nothing, only that Hannibal was a good psychiatrist and he hopes to repay him someday. Jack asks if he ever met Will Graham, another of Hannibal's patients. Mason says he's only heard of Will Graham but has never met him personally. Jack knows he's lying and leaves. Just then, Margot arrives to take care of her brother. That night, Will meets with Hannibal and tells him they're going to get caught, because this is an incident where they will find all the evidence. Hannibal tells Will that Jack knows he killed Freddie Lowndes and will arrest him soon. Will suggests that he should just tell Jack that he is the Chesapeake Ripper. He says Jack is his friend and will understand, and might even join them. Then we see Hannibal, following Will's advice, inviting Jack to dinner. He plans to tell Jack everything at the dinner, but he knows Jack won't come alone. He'll come with the intention of arresting him. Meanwhile, Will is also planning with Jack, telling him that Hannibal will probably attack him. Jack says he'll have snipers stationed outside the house so Hannibal can't escape. Will had also told Hannibal that Jack is a well-trained agent and won't be easy to kill. When both Hannibal and Jack asked Will if he would be on their side, he said yes to both of them. That night, when Will arrives home, he hallucinates seeing Jacob Hobbs, who points towards the woods and tells him to look closely. He sees the devil there and shoots at it. The next morning, Hannibal visits Jack's wife, who tells him she was already dead, but he made a huge mistake by bringing her back to life. Hannibal says her decision was wrong because she can't just leave Jack like that. Hearing this, his wife, Bella, says she saved him for Jack, so will he now save Jack for her? Hannibal doesn't answer and leaves. Will meets with Freddie and tells her to think of a survival story for after Hannibal is caught. Freddie tells him not to worry about her, as she'll write a good story. Will tells her to only include Hannibal and himself in her story, and to leave Abigail out of it because he was very close to her. Freddie says she still doubts that Hannibal will be caught. That night, Will goes to Hannibal's, where they burn all the patient files together so the FBI won't find any evidence. Will says that when he leaves this place, he will always remember it. Hannibal tells him he hasn't seen his real mansion yet, which is much bigger and more beautiful. While Will is helping him, Hannibal smells a scent on his shirt, the same scent as Freddie Lowndes' hair. He immediately realizes that Freddie Lowndes is still alive and that Will is betraying him. The next morning, Alana meets with Will and tells him she's completely lost. She feels like Hannibal has poisoned her and she can't think straight. Will tells her they've set a trap to catch Hannibal, and they will catch him. That night, Will goes to Hannibal's for one last dinner. He asks Hannibal if he's going to kill Jack. Hannibal says that if Will doesn't want him to, then why don't the two of them just leave together? Will is surprised that this idea suddenly occurred to him. Hannibal asks if Jack will forgive him. Will replies that Jack wants justice. He wants to know who Hannibal really is. He just wants the truth, and if Hannibal tells him the truth, he will kill him. Meanwhile, Jack goes to the FBI head, who scolds him for orchestrating a murder with Will Graham. She says they can't pass it off as self-defense because Will dismembered the body and displayed it in a museum. Jack insists this is their last chance to catch Hannibal, but the woman doesn't listen and tells him he's suspended. Jack leaves his badge and pistol and goes to sit with his wife. Alana goes to the FBI head and asks why she suspended Jack. The woman tells her they are making foolish plans and have even killed a man in the process. Alana argues that Randall was the killer they were after. The woman says all she knows is that Will killed him, and she will file charges against both Jack and Will and take them into custody. Hearing this, Alana says she knows Jack well. He will still go to Hannibal's house to get justice and try to catch him. That night, Alana calls Will and tells him an arrest warrant has been issued for him. Will then calls Hannibal and tells him the FBI knows everything. Just then, Jack arrives at Hannibal's. Hannibal tells him he's early and dinner isn't ready yet. Jack says he wants to end their friendship right there. Hearing this, Hannibal attacks him, and the two get into a brawl. Alana arrives outside Hannibal's house and hears the sounds of the fight. Inside, Hannibal pretends to be unconscious. When Jack lets go of his throat, Hannibal grabs a piece of glass and stabs him in the neck. A lot of blood gushes out, and Jack locks himself in a room. Hannibal tries to break down the door to kill Jack. Just then, Alana enters and points a gun at Hannibal. She begs him not to kill Jack. Hannibal says he is going to kill him and that she can leave if she wants, but if she shoots him, he'll kill her too. Alana doesn't listen and shoots, but the gun is empty. Hannibal tells her he removed all her bullets and chases after her to kill her. Alana locks herself in another room, where she sees Abigail, who is still alive. She is shocked to see her, and Abigail, apologizing, pushes her out of the window. Alana falls to the ground and starts bleeding. When Will arrives, he sees Alana and starts crying. Alana tells him Jack is still inside and Hannibal is going to kill him. Hearing this, Will goes inside, where he sees Abigail. He is so surprised that he lowers his gun. He asks Abigail where Hannibal is, and she tells him he's right behind him. Hannibal tells Will that he can't go anywhere without him. He hugs Will and then stabs him in the stomach with a knife. Will is wounded. Hannibal tells him he trusted him, but Will betrayed him, which he did not like at all. He cries as he looks at the wounded Will because he considered him a good friend. He says Will definitely be punished for this. He forgives Will for his betrayal and says that for what he's about to do now, he hopes Will can forgive him. Will begs him not to touch Abigail, but Hannibal calls Abigail over and slits her throat, wounding her as well. Afterward, Hannibal goes outside, washes the blood off himself in the rain, puts on his coat, and leaves. In the next scene, we see Hannibal on an airplane. He orders a glass of wine from the flight attendant, and we see that his psychiatrist, Bedelia, is sitting next to him. And with that, Season 2 comes to an end. So that was the story of Season 2, where Will thought he could outsmart Hannibal, but Hannibal proved to be even more cunning and managed to escape. The story continues in Season 3, which we'll bring to you very soon. Let us know in the comments when you'd like to see it. And most importantly, if you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to subscribe, turn on the bell notification, and we'll see you next time.